Welcome to the Gen Z Journey, where we work with you through an entrepreneurial lens to build a wholesome perspective on life and build both our business and personal dreams together. Join our community on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn at Gen Z Journey. So, hello and welcome to another Gen Z Journey podcast. You're here today for another guest podcast and you're going to meet the wonderful Matt Maximo. I'll get him to introduce himself in one moment, but like I always say at the start of these podcasts, we want you to get to know the guests intimately. We want you to be able to see and document their success and kind of project them into the future so that when we check back in with them in a year's time, you can see the progress that they've made in whatever direction that is. So we're super excited to bring Matt on. He's got some great stories and I can't wait to kind of hear them. But Matt, I'd like you just to introduce yourself first, just a small kind of 2-minute elevator introduction of who you are and where you come from.
Sure. Thanks, Rio. So I'm Matt. I'm from Seattle, was born and raised here. I kind of started taking an interest in business or just making money at a pretty young age. One of my friends and I, when we were 14, we used to buy hats from Chinese wholesale websites and resell them on eBay. And then kind of continue doing little things like that here and there throughout college until my senior year. I got pretty into the startup world. I started working at a venture capital firm out in Seattle and took a stab at a startup with one of my buddies in college as well. And we started building some software, talking to some customers, and really digging our toes into kind of what the startup world was like. And it didn't turn out into necessarily like a financial monetary success, but we got a lot of really good experience and a lot of job opportunities. And I definitely wouldn't be where I am today without taking kind of that step and really just attempting to just do something, because really all what we got out of it was experience. Was like real life job experience without having graduated yet. So
that's crazy, and I can't wait to dig into that more. But we've also got our own little success story in terms of getting in contact with Matt and stuff, and just giving people inspiration of getting out there and networking. We've met Matt now, and we've had great conversations. I think he's great. I think he's a real good guy, and I wouldn't have met him otherwise. But Aaron, I want you to just speak on how you networked and how you found Matt and how you made that initial contact, because for a lot of people that's even out of their remit right now. So giving them that information would be super important.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be completely honest. I found him in the same way I find almost every one of our guests. I went on LinkedIn. I was pretty much just doing my usual interaction with LinkedIn and seeing people's posts and all that. And I can't recall, but I believe it actually just came out as a suggestion for someone to add me. And I always just go through those suggestions and see what kind of people there are out there. And I saw that he had co-founded pretty much a blockchain business, and I got really intrigued by that because first of all, not many people really know about blockchain, and then second of all, he had found a company very early on, and I saw that he was from the same university as me, and so I just connected with him and kind of asked him if he'd be interested in talking with us, and it kicked off from there.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, Matt, I want to dig straight into your background and particularly kind of your college experience. I think it's very unique, but I think it can be an inspiration for a lot of people as well, because the way in which I see your story is that you went to college, you did the college experience, but at the same time you developed an entrepreneurial kind of mindset, and you, like you said, you started this company and you gain the experience that people just wouldn't otherwise have. So in a sense, in my view, you had the entrepreneur kind of mindset and success initially at the same time as having that college experience, which normally people just can't comprehend. It's got to be like one or the other. So just like talk us through that and talk of some of the stuff that you were doing while you were at college and how you did that.
Yeah, so let's see. So I get to college, freshman year. I'm at a small school. There's, not a whole lot of like, there's no Greek life or anything. So it doesn't feel like the typical college experience that I'm expecting. Right. But we have this, there's this one party that shows up once a year, towards the end of the year. And if you're a freshman, you don't know anything about this. It's kind of a secret for the upperclassmen. And it just shows up, right? And you buy it, you Venmo some random person some money, you get your t-shirt, and that's your ticket into the party, right? So one of my friends told me about it. I randomly Venmoed somebody while I was in class. It was like $30. I was like, whatever. I mean, freshman year, I'll take the chance. $30, like, okay, we'll see what happens. Turned out to be really fun. This party was pretty cool. And then I heard that the guy who had started this event, it was like a yearly event and party, had actually graduated the year prior and had only hosted it because so many people had just begged him to do it. And I heard about this, so I was like, seems pretty easy. It's a pretty cool thing. They also donated a lot of money to charity, so why not? Like I messaged the Facebook account that everyone thought was so mysterious and whatever. Turned out to just be some dude named Alex. We went out and got some coffee like a week later, and he was super, super happy that somebody was willing to step up and take on the responsibility, because it is quite a challenge to do it, which I'll explain in a bit. But basically we sat down. I kind of told him about myself. I just mentioned how I just told him a little bit about myself. What is there to say when you're 18, 19? And he felt confident enough to pass me the reins, gave me kind of a document with some info and phone numbers and stuff he'd kind of previously set up for me to build off of. And then I just took it from there. And so I mean, that was kind of my first step of just like,
I just want to stop you there though. It's like that for a lot of people and myself in a way, I've always been that way inclined. It's like when I see something interesting, I want to go and find out more. I want to be involved, but for some people that going and taking that step of sending the message or like going and having that initial meeting is just like, whoa, that's crazy. So like what was going through your mind when you did that? Like, was it just a fact that I'm interested, I want to find out more? Like how did you just take that step to go and meet with him and want to be interested and genuinely like want to hear more about it? Why, what was going through your head?
It was both interest and opportunity. So it was a super, super fun party, super fun event. And I love, just being social, hanging out with people. And so it was really cool. And I wanted to make sure it kept going. And two, I saw opportunity, right? There were 500 people there paying $35 a shirt. And then I saw people trying to buy shirts from other people after the fact because they sold out for hundreds of dollars, right? So I'm like, this event's making a ton of money, right? Like I threw 3 of them and it grossed more than 50,000, right?
56,000 is the medium average household income in the U.S. in a year. So 3-day event, he made as much as someone does in a year.
And all of those tickets sold out in under 2 minutes. So less than 10 minutes, all of those sales were done. So tons of opportunity, right? I was like, dang, there's a lot of money going on right here. It's a really cool event. And it's honestly pretty complex. Like we were hiring security. We had a bunch of vendors for food, porta potties, merchandise. I was ordering the shirts. I had to deal with houses, right? Venues for each of the parties to happen at, dealing with the police, noise codes. And really the biggest part of this whole job, of this whole party was getting the houses. Cause that's like a big, big, big sales job. And something I kind of discounted until I tried passing it on. So Alex, the guy who had previously started this, he was on the golf team and he was pretty social. So like quite a few people just knew of him, which helped when he went to talk to houses, right? Like he just knew where people lived. And it's not, I'm not saying this is a question of like popularity or anything, but more in the sense that people just knew of him, right? And when you know somebody, it just helps that interaction a lot better, especially when you're kind of talking about college where it's a little bit still kind of like school, and people, social norms and this and that. So that helped him out, right? He would go knock on someone's door and just be like, "Hey, I'm Alex. We're familiar with each other. You mind if we talk? Like this, I'm trying to throw this party. There's this amount of money to make sure your house won't get damaged, blah, blah, blah." Big sales job, right? And so when I kind of took it over, that was one thing that I made sure to do. But I kind of also did that subconsciously. Like I was friends with a lot of the older upperclassmen, which helped out when finding houses. However, when I passed it on to the younger kids, the group that I kind of passed it on to they weren't really close with the upperclassmen, and they were a little bit quieter, and they had done some things. They were the kids that tried to start the frat at Seattle U. And I didn't really know that. So that just didn't really help out. You know what I mean? And that goes back to the idea of it's not who you know, it's who knows you, right? Because when people know you, whether they know you super well or not, it kind of helps break that ice. And then you can, they're more willing to at least hear you out.
Yeah, absolutely. And Aaron, did you know these events going on?
Oh yeah, I definitely knew about the events going on. I never attended one, just because I never was much of a party goer, which is part of the reason I actually was fine with going to Seattle University, because as Matt said, there's not much for frat life or any kind of Greek life. I mean, I knew the parties going on. I had identified that literally freshman year of me going in. I quickly caught on to that trend of that weird T-shirt going around, and I was like, "Oh, what the hell is this?" And it ended up being that it was a party, and I've always seen it every year that I was at SU. I saw those shirts, so there's definitely a very widely spread brand. And the funny part is that brand is all through word of mouth. So it really goes to show how powerful word of mouth can be when you network and when you create something that people want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when people just see you when people see you doing something that people want. Like I actually made one of my buddies, good buddies now, works in the area doing a lot of stuff with local artists, and venues and clubs and stuff, who I actually met through the Playdate page. He messaged the Playdate page and was like, "Hey, doing some promoting stuff with a couple of clubs here. Like, if you're interested, I'd love to work with you to do some some promotions," right? And he did that to me. He reached out to me, and I was like, "Hey, I don't really do that, but super down to talk to you about it." And we talk pretty much like every week now still, and 4 years later. I think I've met him like once in person. You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of one of those things. Like, it's when you get to college, you're kind of in this weird middle ground of high school and the real world, where in high school, it's kind of weird and awkward to go randomly talk to somebody, right? Like, to go and randomly walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, like, Rio, you seem like a nice guy. I'd love to be your friend," is, while people might want to do that, like a lot of the times, or the perception is like someone might look at you and be like, "Oh, that's kind of weird," right? In real life, like in adult life, for the most part, if you walk up to somebody and you're like, "Hey, like, that's a really cool shirt. Like, would you, like, you want to talk to them, or you want to ask about their job or something?" People are generally very willing to talk to you.
Yeah, and part of that is the fact that in real life, you don't have the system of going to school for 6 to 8 hours a day and just being set with a certain group of people. You have to go out and find your own kind. You have to go out and take the time to actually find people that you like and you enjoy. And that college is that in between, like you said, because you have the freedom of meeting new people and interacting on campus and everything while you still have a little bit of the class time.
And to your point, Rio, of like doing college in both ways, like you said, I think I did a little bit subconsciously, now that if I think about it that way, but being conscious of that, of just like, hey, like, reach out to people. Like, being a student is one of the greatest life hacks ever, because you can reach out to anybody and say, "Hey, I'm a student. I'm interested in this. Was wondering if you have a few minutes to talk to me about anything." And you make that, like, I did that to the CTO of StubHub. My kind of question wasn't necessarily geared for him, and he might not have had time for me, but he was like, "Hey, I don't have time. Here's the email to our CIO. He's the perfect guy for you. Reach out to him." I emailed him, talked to him on FaceTime for like an hour. He answered all my questions, invited us to a conference down in Vegas, and then Next thing we knew, we were competing with like Ticketmaster and SeatGeek on bids, right? Like, all because I messaged this guy on LinkedIn, was like, hey, I got a question for you. I'm a student. Do you think you got a few minutes for me? Right? Like, anybody's willing to talk to a student. It's just the best life hack ever.
And that's because I tell you why that is as well, and that's because people are excited for you and whatever you're doing, no matter what it is. Like they see a young individual that's got a lot of potential because they're out there, they're trying different things, they're asking people, and people want to get when people want you to win, you're going to win, you're most likely to win, right? And that's such a huge thing, and it's something I totally get for when I came here. I think I've mentioned it a couple of times on the podcast, but I'll mention it quickly again. When I arrived here, I did a lot of networking, just local like Chamber of Commerce events and different things. And that was something that I just stumbled across, is the fact that I would attend those events and I didn't have an agenda. Like, I'm not trying to sell a product, I'm not trying to get referrals, I'm not trying to get clients. I just want to attend the event, I want to learn people. I had one thing, is I wanted to get a little bit of mentorship from someone in business, and that was my only thing. But I would go in and I would just talk to people, and they would just, and that's a sure way for them to remember you, because you weren't trying to sell them anything. They were just genuinely interested in my business and what I was doing. So I developed countless connections over those first 2 months of being here, just through that, and people that were willing to do stuff and like you say, put your neck out for me, and like, oh yeah, I'll refer you to this guy to help you out with something, or oh, I can help you with that, or whatever it may be. So yeah, that's.
And people love talking about themselves or their work. You know what I mean? Like, ask somebody about what their job is, and odds are somebody might start off and give you kind of the easy answer of like, oh, I do data analytics for this, right? But if you kind of poke a little bit, because that's kind of the, I don't know how much you're actually curious about this question, right? If you poke a little bit and you're like, okay, but like what do you specifically do? Or maybe like, what are you working on right now? Or what's a cool project you've done? Or I don't actually know what that is. Could you explain it to me? I'm curious, trying to explore, like, figure out what I want to do, different types of things. Those types of questions are perfect because that will kind of break the ice and people will just start talking.
Definitely. And I mean, the best example of that is this podcast. Think about how many interviews we've gotten and how many people we have lined up now. The more people learn about the podcast, the more people are willing to come on this podcast and be interviewed. And the whole reason is because people love talking about themselves. And we're genuinely curious about learning about people's journeys and where they're going, and what their mission is, what their goals are, because for us it's fun, it's exciting, it's a chance to network, and for them it's a chance to brand themselves, to talk about themselves, and really just share their passion. I mean, what else is there to life than sharing your passions with other people? So,
and I like what you guys are doing too, with the angle of talking to people who like Gen Z, because I don't know for other people, but for me, I'm always thinking about like, oh man, I should have done this differently like a year ago. Kind of just like that year little tick of retrospect where I'm kind of looking back at my previous decisions and seeing what I could have done better, or what advice I wished I had, or how things would have been different if I knew what I knew today. And so it's an interesting perspective on this type of advice, because you're not necessarily asking somebody who's like established or whatever, but you're asking somebody who's kind of thinking about this exact situation you guys were in. So
exactly, and the potential for like people my age, just a couple of years younger than you guys, is the fact that, well, I can take that thing that you wanted to do here, I can do that time, and it saves the time.
And to be honest, the only difference between you and me right now is just that I've kind of had I've had 2 more years to kind of look into this and that and just familiarize myself enough to where I feel confident that I can say, hey, you need help incorporating your business or making a website or doing this and that. Yeah, I can help you out and figure it out. Because it's not so much about like knowing how to do it, but knowing how to get it done.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? The building blocks these days, whether, like if you're writing code, snippets of every bit of code for the most part is probably already built, and you can just Google it. You just got to put it together properly. And the person who puts it together properly is going to get the credit over the people who wrote the snippets of code.
It's true. It's knowledge, right? It's knowledge of how to get this stuff done.
I mean, CEOs don't actually do any like work. Bezos isn't overseeing or designing anything about Amazon. He's just making the decisions and saying, hey, we need to get this done. And then you guys do it, right? Yeah.
But people don't like that idea of decision. It's one of the hardest things. It's decision. I mean, that's why marketing, the whole idea behind marketing and the business side of marketing is understanding people's decision making and helping guide their decision making. And so, you know, that's hard for people to understand how to guide someone else. And that's also why consulting's a thing. You know, you talk about consulting a lot, Matt. And consulting is a big thing for that reason, is because people are unsure of how to make decisions, and they need someone to guide them and take them towards those decisions and really being successful with that.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this has been super awesome, this conversation, but we need to get back on track because we paused at the party in running that. So let's move on to kind of now let's go into your startup, and like, when did you begin that? How far did you go with that? Like all the stuff, just the story behind that, because that's super, like, an awesome story as well. And that's why he's been talking to these CTOs, CIOs and getting in conversation with them.
Yeah. So I'm sitting at the venture capital firm, Madrona, right here. And it's maybe like, I'm in like the first month of the first like week of my job there, and they had just invested in this startup that did baseball cards on the blockchain. And I had recently been learning about kind of the underlying technology on Ethereum that would make this possible and make this like a valuable business idea. And while I was doing my own kind of research on this, my initial idea was not baseball cards, but was to do tickets, because what this would have done would have made it a lot more secure for event tickets. Like, you could have bought a ticket on Craigslist and known that you were getting a real ticket. That was that type of idea. And so I was originally scheming. So I was kind of putting together my ideas, like plotting like a pitch deck and all this stuff, and scheming to pitch it to them so that they could hire me when I graduated, whether it was for the ticketing thing or for their own job. And so throughout these next couple months, I start talking to their employees here and there, right? I'm near the front desk, and I'm just like one of the CEOs' name was Kush. I was like, hey Kush, how you doing? Helping them out, bringing them their mail, the little things, anything so that I could come in contact and just talk to them, make myself present so that they would know me, right? And yeah. And then I told my dad about the idea, because he's a developer and was in the blockchain space, and he was like, oh, that's a pretty cool idea. I used to work with this guy who's about your age who could probably help you do this. And so I was like, all right, cool, sure. So met up with this guy, Derek. He's not technical either, but he's not a developer. But we put together a pitch deck, and there was a pitch competition that next week. So we put together a website, a pitch deck, thought through kind of the business model and all that stuff, and then presented at this event. Got second place behind some company with a couple $1 million already, so that was rough. But we got a lot of really good traction there. People reached out to us, and so we just decided to run with it. And from then on, we started going to more and more conferences, just messaging people. One of the best contacts I made was I found some guy on LinkedIn who graduated from UW, started his own kind of ticketing resale company, messaged him on LinkedIn, went down to those buildings by the Seahawks stadium. We talked for like 45 minutes. He gets a phone call from somebody. He's like, oh, hey, looks at me. He's like, hey, want to make $60? And I was like, I mean, sure, why not? And he was like, cool, come with me. So we keep talking. We go walk to the stadium. He buys he tells me to buy 4 tickets for $75 each. And then he's going to buy them for me for $100 each, right? Or whatever the price was, just right then and there. And that was both cool for me because I got some easy money. And, but I also learned a lot, because that was a big part of the business that we had to understand to build our startup. So this guy that I reached out to, it's funny, my co-founder actually initially was like, when I sent him his profile, he kind of looked at me and was like, I mean, I don't see how this guy could help us. Like, he's a broker. He's not really our client or whatever. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, he's from Seattle. There's not a whole lot of people in the space from Seattle. So I was like, whatever, I'll do it. he ended up introducing me to another guy who we ended up partnering with their AI ticketing payment flow for startup. We partnered with them. He also introduced us to another one of our current customers who runs carnivals across the country, who we're building a cashless payment system for. And I had coffee with him once, and then went back to his office maybe once or twice after that. And the guy who I messaged on LinkedIn, we never actually worked with him or anything. But we worked with the people he introduced us to, and that word just kind of traveled, and he just continued introducing us to more and more people. He also introduced us to the owners of a couple professional teams out here who were trying to switch from their ticketing system. So we were bidding against SeatGeek and Ticketmaster. So you know what I mean? It's just a trickle effect. You just reach out to somebody, and you can sit there in your room and look at people on LinkedIn or whoever and try and nitpick here and there and like, oh, this would be perfect. This person's probably not that good. But at the end of the day, like, just do it. Right? That was so bad, actually. That was so funny. But literally, like, if you have an idea or anything, just go do it. Just talk to somebody. You can sit there and think about it all you want, and you'll think of the reasons not to, but you just never know what's going to happen. Right? Like, what's the worst that can happen? These people just don't respond to me on LinkedIn. Like, okay, fine.
That's so true. That's so true. And I mean, we totally get that here with our reaching out of people for the podcast and for guests. That's a huge part of it. It's like, okay, they might say no, but if not, we get a super cool guest, and we get to be genuinely interested about them, what they're doing, and advocate for them. And so that's,
you have to hack the system too with this whole podcast.
Part of the good advice to take from here is the fact that you don't want to be get into the nitty gritty of who you're always connecting with, but you want to connect with people regardless of whether they're always of interest for you or not, because you never know when they can come in handy, and you never know what they might bring to the table that you can't see on the surface. So it might be that you end up meeting someone in a completely unrelated field or whatever, but then one day, let's say you're just talking to someone about starting a business, and you have a specific problem in your business. Maybe that person knows someone. Let's say you posted on LinkedIn, and they see you post a problem on LinkedIn, and someone sees your post, or that specific person that you thought wouldn't be helpful sees your post, and they're like, oh, I know someone, and they reach out and they give you that resource, and then there you go, you solve your problem. And it was all because you just networked. And people are willing to hand out their network, and they're willing to hand out their resources if you ask them to, and if you're open to.
And in that scenario that you just mentioned, you didn't actually do any work, any like physical work. You got the work done, but you didn't actually do it. You just put together the team, or got the people, the resources, things done that you needed to do, compile it all together. There you go.
Definitely true. Well, I mean, there's so much value in this podcast, it's unreal. But let's move on to like kind of the next part of things. So you did the startup and all of that, and then where did you go? What happened after college? And kind of we're getting more to the present now of where you're at now. So just take us towards that, finishing college, what you were doing, and where you are now.
Yeah. So I'm finished college, graduated. My buddy and I are still working on our startup. We've now picked up a CIO. He's kind of a more established developer, kind of older guy with a lot more experience. And so we kind of go heads down, full steam. We're building our product for that carnival guy, trying to see where the wind takes us. And then I was at a friend's house talking to their dad, and he does consulting. So I was asking him kind of about consulting and how that goes, because my biggest question for him was, after understanding kind of what consulting was, my biggest question was, all right, how do you go to a big company and say, this is your problem, pay me to fix it for you, right? When I'm going to companies, I'm saying, hey, you have a problem of ticket fraud. I have the solution, and it's pretty cheap and or free. would you like to use it? And that was a very hard sell, you know what I mean? And so that was kind of my question, was like, you don't have a product, like consultants don't have a product necessarily. So like, how do you get this done? Like, how did you build this company? And through those questions and also him kind of understanding my background and seeing the work we had done previously, just kind of on my own, he thought that I'd be a good fit for one of the projects they were working on, and offered me a position after a couple more interviews. So that kind of goes back to the idea of like, who knows you, right? And and just asking questions and taking a genuine interest. Because I mean, this is like a good family friend who I've known for many years, right? And it's not like I was a exceptional high school student or exceptional athlete. If anything, I was the worst athlete of all of our friends, you know, like knew. I was a pretty average student, but I like little things probably that I would imagine helped. I always made an effort to talk to them very like normally when I went to their house, like, hey, Mr. Stephens, how you doing? You know, that type of thing. So I like to think that kind of helped. But then also just seeing that I spent a lot of college trying to start a business, which is something that he did, right? Or seeing that I was actually spending my free time learning how to code or learning how to do prototypes and this and that instead of whatever or nothing, you know what I mean? I think gave him confidence without like seeing my resume or anything, gave him confidence that I could do this role, right? And he knew that I was a biology major. He knew that I had never had a job before, that I had no idea what this job was or anything, other than that he was confident that I could learn it pretty well, and that my current level of understanding of technologies and just Excel and how data works was enough to take on this role. And so that kind of led me to my current job at KPMG doing consulting. I didn't have to apply for my job at KPMG. I didn't have to do any of the hiring process. I was at lunch with my sister and I got a call from the recruiter who was like, hey, I was told that you were interested in a role at KPMG. Is this true? I said yes. She was like, what's your salary expectation? I told her, and then that was it. They sent me an offer like a few weeks later, and then I got rolling.
That's awesome. So talking a little bit about you getting those job offers and everything, and you mentioned how he noticed the fact that he didn't just goof off on all your free time. You actually used some of your free time to be productive. What other stuff do you currently do right now with all the free time that you have?
So we had this joke in high school. I was in DECA, which is kind of like the business class, and this one kid would always yell, "I'm an ideas guy," right? Because DECA is kind of all about thinking of ideas and turning them into business plans. And so honestly, like I would say I'm kind of an ideas guy. Part of just like what I like, my natural state is always just thinking about like random things that could be businesses or anything, right? Mainly, I guess, because I'm lazy. I like a lot of these are automation type things, or how can I make like my day-to-day life easier or better. And so that's kind of where a lot of my ideas come from. Our kind of old ticketing startup is sort of on limbo given COVID and there's no events going on. So my two buddies and I were kind of in this process of trying to start another kind of mini business to see what the landscape is like. So we're just talking to potential customers and people who fit our demographic, just to kind of understand their wants, their needs, what they're interested in, their budgets, those types of things, just to kind of evaluate if this is a valuable business to pursue. So yeah, that's one thing. Another one is kind of a hobby that I've turned into a mini business where I do BMW coding. So I kind of learned how to code, almost like jailbreak my BMW to unlock like factory settings that aren't available. And it's kind of a difficult thing to do that also requires some parts that you need to order. And so I've been doing that for other people here and there.
So watch out, ladies and gentlemen. He's a BMW driver, so he doesn't use his indicators.
I think I told somebody that mine didn't come with an indicator recently. So yeah, I do that, and then I also do some like web consulting on the side, which kind of just started up with people asking me. So actually, this came back from the startup. So from experience with the startup. So a couple of my friends are starting businesses, and they needed help incorporating and setting up bank accounts and doing some basic legal setup, which takes a couple hours of research, and you can do it all yourself. But the type of value, I guess, for them was to not have to do that research and just, knowing somebody who's done it recently who could help them out, right? And so I've done that for a few of them, and not a lawyer, so I'm not qualified to help with legal work, but I can help them figure out a privacy policy pretty easily, like that type of thing, or set up a website, or just really anything that they kind of ask for, marketing. And that's not to say that I do it all myself, but I'm familiar enough with it that I can find somebody who knows how to do it, and also be confident that I know they know how to do it, right? So that I can be able to tell if someone's kind of like BSing me, right? But it's one of those things that's kind of like, you do something and people are aware of it. They might ask you to do it in the future, just because a lot of the value there is that they don't have to try and learn how to do it and take the risk.
Definitely. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because that idea of being a jack of all trades is something that I deeply hold myself to as well. I love learning a little bit of everything for that same reason. I want to be able to make sure that someone's not BSing me, that someone's not throwing me under the bus, and just handing me a buttload of information that falls, and then just taking my money. I always want to make sure that I know enough so I can tell when someone's not being genuine to me. And that's something that I do every day by just reading and learning, and constantly, even at night or in the mornings or whenever I have free time, I'll open up my phone and I'll read an article on whatever I'm interested in at the moment, whether it's about politics, whether it's about me learning a little bit more about my own web design and development. I'm always looking to just learn a new topic and bring more information to myself so then I can later use it.
Yeah. And that's one thing that honestly also has brought me some insecurity at times, because to that point of like, CEOs don't necessarily do any of the actual work. A lot of what is seen as valuable and good, and like the real jobs are the ones where you are producing a piece of equipment or a piece of executable code or software, right? Like, you're doing something tangible. And coming from like immigrant Chinese parents, like, they're very kind of on that track as well, like, be a doctor, be an engineer, be that type of thing. And I say that because, like, working at the venture capital firm I worked at, one of the executive assistants one time mentioned that, like, sometimes she feels like she's not doing like real work, right? But it's hard to realize sometimes that, like, that type of jack of all trades, or just any sort of like business work or connecting people, right, is actually work. Like, there's effort that goes into that, and not everybody can do it, and it is very valuable. Very, very valuable. Like, another guy who got hired by that venture capital firm downstairs, was really hired mainly because he's kind of known as a guy who just connects people together, because he's just known by so many people and so well liked. And to be honest, I tried finding out like a distinctive skill or tangible thing that he had that would make him so desirable or valuable. Maybe like he could code something, or he did. I couldn't really find anything other than that he was really just like a people person, who kind of built his career and reputation off people constantly reaching out and saying, hey, can you introduce me to this person that you know? And that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I think it's a huge skill as well, because I wouldn't consider myself to have near enough the skills, the tangible skills that you guys have. But I've always had a gift of being able to put a team around me that can do it. I can lead them, I can help and direct them, but I can put the team around me to succeed. So you don't always need to do the things yourself. It's nice to have the knowledge, of course, and you'll learn as you pick it up from them. But yeah, putting the right team around you to succeed and get somewhere is totally key in the business world, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, my boss right now at KPMG doesn't do. We actually had this conversation this week. He doesn't actually do any like work, quote unquote. I mean, he does a lot of work. Don't get me wrong, but he was saying how like the client sometimes questions what work he does, and it's not because he doesn't actually do any work, but it's because he's our highest paid employee, highest level, whatever, right? And all he does is just put together docs, presentations, PowerPoints. He talks to all the clients, manages the work streams. He's engaging the client, making sure that they're still on board with budget, this and that, right? And he's working, probably putting in the most hours from all of us. And that's because he knows he's done all this before, and he can tell me like, hey, Matt, like you need to do this, this, and this to accomplish this work stream. And then I just figure out how to do it. Because he doesn't have the time to do it, but he knows to tell me and the other 5 people what to do so that we can go spend the 10 hours to do it. And then he can compile that into 2 hours of work, right? That type of thing. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to agree with both of you guys in the fact that I think it's actually what is very valuable between all 3 of us is that we all understand our strengths or weaknesses and what we can't fulfill and what we're unable to really do ourselves. We figure out a way to have it done for us in a way where we bring people in and we bring that team around us. As I've always told Rio, he feels like the face of Gen Z to me a lot of the times because he's a people's person, a lot more than I am. And I'm really trying to develop those skills, and I'm really good at the delegation side of things, but I'm not the best at the people side of things. But if you have a mix of those 2 intangible skills of being a people's person and being able to delegate, you ultimately become the leader because you're capable of really streamlining like your boss does, and you're capable of really setting strategies and plans that then allow people to do the work, and you reap the benefits from it. So I definitely agree that it's a fantastic skill set to have.
Yeah, and being a jack of all trades doesn't mean doing everything, right? It means that you're well versed in a bunch of different subjects that you can use that expertise, to make your solution better.
Yeah, and it gives you enough knowledge to be able to delegate the stuff you don't know. You might not know coding directly, but you understand how coding works and you understand what happens in coding. And so then you're able to find someone that does understand that coding, and you can be like, okay, I need you to build this specific thing because I know you can do it through your code. Or same thing goes for financial modeling, or same thing goes with consulting, any kind of thing that you're just figuring out a way of achieving it, and it's because you have enough knowledge to understand how to achieve those specific tasks in every kind of trade.
And I tell you, Matt, I want to ask you as well. There's something I've begun to notice. As we go through the podcast a lot more, we're big on social media in the sense that like I'm putting a lot of time in it, trying to understand it, not only like the algorithm side of it, but just like what works, what doesn't work, and just testing and doing those different things. And I've started to have a couple of people that come up to me and said, hey, like I'm trying to start my own brand and I want to do it on like with some social media and stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's sick. And they're like, can you help me out? Yeah. And you get to that point, realize like you're like, shit, like, oh yeah, I actually know something about that now. Like I don't, has that been your experience of it as well? It's like, actually, yeah, I've come a long way. I've learned a lot about this stuff, and
that's literally it. That's exactly it. Because for you, right? And I'm not saying this is true, but you might feel in this current state, if I was like, hey, Rio, help me start a podcast, this and that, you might feel like, I mean, hey man, like I could, but what are you going to pay me for? I haven't done that much. I've just recorded a few episodes here and there, right? Like you might feel that way, but the reality is that's not true. Like you've done a lot. And just the sheer fact of putting out one recorded podcast episode is more than 99% of people will do. And you will learn more than anybody can say. Anybody who has not released a podcast episode ever cannot say anything to you about starting a podcast or anything in this realm because they just haven't done it. Right? Like I could spend all day reading a manual on how to fix a car engine, and I could spend a year studying a car manual engine, and once I get to it, it's not going to do anything because the guy who spent a month actually tinkering on the engine will know a ton more than I do.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
that is that's exactly it, and it literally just do it. It literally is the
Every time we say just do it, I just think of the meme.
But yeah, you know what I mean? Like the fact that you guys have just done this is very valuable. And when people ask you that, say yes every time. Because at the end of the day, even if you can't do the actual work for them, help them out, introduce them to someone who can. Because now because now you've done something good for two people. The person who you got the work for is going to feel awesome and they're going to be like, yeah, Rio's a sweet dude. The guy who you got the work for is going to say, oh yeah, Rio's super dependable. If you need anything in this realm, talk to him. He'll
that
help you out.
I can tell you. So the exact I've had 2 people I can count who's come up and asked me about that so far. So the thing I've said to them both times, and this is my always my opening sentence, like, yes, I'll help you as much as I can, but if it ever gets to the point where I can't help you anymore or I don't know how to do something, I'll find someone to help you out. And that's always the pitch to the individual.
It's words of wisdom from Rio. That's 100% true, and that's what I say too. Actually, is I always tell people, sure, I'll help you, and if I can't do it, I'll find someone to connect you with that'll help you. And I do that from the goodness of my heart, and knowing that it's going to reciprocate, whether they directly reciprocate that to me or whether someone in their network that my name just spreads around and someone in their network will later come back to you or will say to you, hey, like someone mentioned you and I heard you were really good at this or you're really good at that, and it just ends up coming back to you. So why not do it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
That second part of it too of I'll help find someone to do it is just as valuable as the first one because say I'm asking I need you to help me find a web designer because I have no clue what web design is. I'm more confident that you can help me find a better price than I could, right? Or you just know where to look. Like I don't have no idea where to look. But on top of that, do I know what I'm paying for? No. That's why I have you do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, actually, a good example of this would be bringing up Jeff Bezos. If you ever actually go back to Jeff Bezos's interviews when he's first setting up Amazon and expanding Amazon beyond a bookstore, whenever they asked him, how is it possible that you're going into all these industries and all that? How are you going to compete with these top level competitors that are already in the industry and only do that? His response was always, I'll find someone to do it. I'm not the expert. I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to find the person that can fill that position and do it. And then I'm going to become the best in that way. And that's just how it goes. If you ever want something done, you don't have to be the expert at it. You have to find the expert and bring them to you and be able to understand their skill set to then be able to delegate the work and be able to get them to create the things that you imagine and that you want to happen.
Yep. And we call so those people in I didn't know this term until I got a real corporate job, but they call them SMEs. SME and then lowercase s. Subject matter experts. So basically, these people are in any given organization, they would be your PhDs, your doctors, your architects, your very high level developers, engineers, those types of things, right? The people who are doing the work, right? The ones who are experts in that subject matter. And you've got maybe like 30% of the company that are these people, 20%, and the rest of the people in the company are business people all around them, making sense of the work that they do, marketing, making analytics, presenting it to the higher ups, all of this stuff. It's honestly weird. It's strange. Like
That's it's really interesting. I'll give my dad some props in this episode. That's he is a SME. They don't call it a SME. They call it he's at service now, and so they call it a knowledge member. So someone that's just like his primary purpose is to develop that knowledge and kind of. And then he has his team around that to, no, did you know what they call it? That's actually really interesting. I never realised, I've never heard that concept within the people around them to make sense of it. They call the knowledge members evangelists. So people that speak the info, and then everyone else around them then's like, okay, let's make sense of that and direct it into somewhere. So my dad, in his position, he's really great in the kind of pre-sale side of things because he can take the tech and all the new trends that are going on in the tech world, and he makes sense of it for clients and other individuals within the company as well. but to really give guidance on like, this is why you should, one, either invest, or this is where we should be going with the company, this is the direction we should take in our presentations, or whatever it is. So he has that knowledge, he's built that over the years, and then the people around them help get that out there to more people, and show the value even more. So yeah, that's and I think that's also why we're going off on a bit of a tangent, but for me as well, why like leadership is such a key skill eventually to develop, because like if you want to like be successful in whatever you do, whether you're going to be entrepreneur, whether you're in corporate, whatever it is that you'll learn something with great knowledge, but you'll get to that point where you're just operating on a higher level to a lot of different people. So then being able to lead a team and direct them to like you said, make sense of it and get it out there, like that's when things become really, really valuable, because you start impacting way more people, right?
Yeah, that's literally what I'm doing right now at work is we're using all these systems, and I'm working with 2 developers right now who are actually doing this work and doing the integration work. But we've got a report that bounces across 4 systems, right? It bounces in 4 different databases, and the data itself gets transformed in different ways and calculated in here and there, right? And we have this whole system platform that automatically tracks all of this and does it in a second, right? But we're doing a kind of our proof of concept right now. And so my job is to get those actual data exports and understand what is actually happening and tracking all of that, so that I can go tell the bosses and say, hey, this field of general ledger account amount gets calculated this way and is transformed like this and comes from this database, right? So that they can understand what is going on with the data and how that impacts the business. And these meetings where I present this work consists of like 20 people, 20 like business people around the company. And it's based off of the work of 1.5 guys working like 50% time trying to make this implementation, because they have other roles. You know what I mean? It's that type of thing. Like, it's the value of analysis and understanding is arguably more valuable than the actual just technology.
I completely agree, and the reason behind that is because when you're in that position of being able to understand everyone and understand those different concepts. For example, like we were talking about Rio's dad and him being able to understand that specific innovative ideas, and then being able to translate that to a meeting. That's big. That the idea of translating it to the language of another person in a completely different department, in a completely different field of work, that doesn't understand something like software but understands finances, but trying to translate that software into an understanding that someone in finances would be able to understand why what's happening is invaluable. There's no way of really putting a price tag on that translation and being able to transfer that information across a business.
Yeah, and that's because at the end of the day, whatever technology or physical work, tangible work you're actually doing doesn't matter at the end of the day unless there's a business value, right? Unless there's value. And a good example in this is if you're trying to start a startup and you want to sell something to somebody, or you're talking to an investor, they're not going to ask you how it works for the most part. No one cares. That's not going to be their first question. And if they even ask you, they're not going to care. That was one thing we learned. That's something I learned over and over, and I had beat into my head that still my co-founders don't fully understand, is that they don't care how it works. They only care what it does and what the result of what it does brings, in terms of like money.
I want to jump in on this. I want to jump in on this as well, because it's something that's really occurred to me this week that I think I was more blind to. I didn't realize as much, but it's after I was recommended actually, but it was after a video I watched by Simon Sinek, and it's called The Golden Circle, right? Have you seen it? You know what I mean? And he talks exactly about that, and it's exactly what makes a successful company. That's why people will never ask, because anybody can tell you what they do, it's easy to figure out. But it's like that, it just those 3 levels of what is it? It's like what, how, and why is the 3. And it's like that's why these brands such as Apple, it's like they don't sell you a Mac, they don't sell you an iPad. they create an environment of, yeah, the Apple experience. It's next level. We're cutting edge. We're aesthetic. We're all of these different things. Oh, and we also sell like computers, you know.
Yeah, they don't care about how you created the aesthetic. They don't care what CPU is in it or whatever, or how the new and improved CPU came to be. The customer only cares about it being faster, about it looking better, about its functionality, and that's ultimately is something being able to portray that functionality and portray the actual use behind what is happening in the business is what people care about, not the actual product itself, but the way that product creates a solution.
Yeah, the example he uses in that talk is Samsung versus Apple, right? So it was back in the day when Apple, so some guy, what he did, the skier, he tied fishing twine to all four corners of his iPhone and made it so that he could spin it around his head and while recording, and it made this really cool kind of 3D video. And he did it while he was ripping down the mountain and posted it to YouTube. It went viral, and Apple bought that video from him and just put their shot on iPhone at the end of it, and that was the entire ad. And that ad was massively successful. And he compared it to the Samsung ones because the Samsung ads are get the new Samsung Galaxy S10. It's got 500 gigs of space. It's got this and that. It's got 20 hours of battery life. But at the end of the day, people don't really care that much because they want to see what can I do with this 15 megapixel camera, right? Oh, I can take pictures in the dark. I can take a sick video of me skiing with this.
I want to be that person. How do I do it? I buy an Apple product. Like, yeah.
That's what it is. You sell them the experience or the lifestyle. You sell them like, or in the case of business, you sell them the cost savings, the great experience for their customers or for their employees, right? You're selling them that, not the actual like specifications. You're selling them how much better their life gets.
Wink, wink, which is why we call this an entrepreneur lifestyle and why it's an experience to come on the podcast and why that's what our brand is built around, you know.
100%.
Exactly. Well, we need to begin to wrap things up here. So I'll get on to the kind of the final questions. But we've got two final questions, and the first one is, what do you want to, like, where do you want to go in the future? What's your future projection for yourself at the moment? Where do you see yourself 5-10 years down the line, and what do you want to have achieved?
Ooh, that's tough. I mean, that's kind of the thing is I honestly still don't know what I want to do, what specific subject area I want to get into. If you were to ask me, my interest would be like tech or biotech, on kind of the business side of that. But I'm hoping to be back kind of in the startup world, working for an early stage startup probably. I want to get back into the kind of that small, fast-paced team environment as opposed to kind of the slower kind of corporate pace.
I just want to say, like, I'm super excited for you, whatever path you take, because the fact that you can admit that, yeah, I still don't know. It's like no one fucking knows. Like, no one really knows. And the more someone says, this is exactly where I want to go, unless they're like, it's a genuine passion they've had all their life, I think it's a fake a lot of the time. You know, it's a facade. But I think I just love that concept of, like, you know, just accepting it. I've got passions, I've got interests, I'm pursuing them now in the present, and I'm really enjoying it. And like, that's so fruitful. Like, I've learned that recently in my life. I wrote a little LinkedIn post about it the other day, and it's like, it's just so important, and I just got so much appreciation for those kind of mindsets. So I'm excited for you.
I want to kind of add on to that, to actually referencing one of our articles, the one about common barriers as an entrepreneur and living the entrepreneurial lifestyle. We talked about the fact that you can't really plan the nitty gritty of a plan or whatever you're doing with the business. You know, you can have an overarching idea and kind of a feeling of where you want to go with things, but you can't plan something really far in ahead because so many bumps in the road will change your path and it'll change the direction of where you're going. So it's that idea of just kind of going with the flow a little bit while you still have specific interests in everything is really beneficial because it allows you to be very open-minded and really take on what's coming at you and take it on with a positive mindset.
Yep. Yeah, it's totally okay not to know what you want to do, but you got to be flexible and you got to just do something, right? Like my job right now, if you had told me, if you had showed me a job posting for a data analyst doing my role, I would have looked at you and said, no, I don't want to get into this kind of work ever, right? Doing it is completely different from what I thought it would be. And I've learned a lot, and it's opened a lot more opportunities, and it's just shown me other things I could get into that I would have never learned had I sat around or settled for some kind of random job that I thought fit kind of my idea of what I wanted potentially, right? So I mean that kind of just goes to like, if you don't get your ideal job or whatever, just take a job. You might hate it, but learn something from it. And if you hate it, you learn, that's something good that you learned. You know?
And if you don't take a job, start your own project, because you never know where that's going to go. I had no idea how far the podcast was going to go when I started this, and now I spent a 15-hour day working on it yesterday just because I was passionate about it. You know, that's
people will support you. Like, people will support you.
Really, the podcast is the perfect example. When we started 5 months ago, I literally saw myself, I envisioned myself just writing articles because we didn't start it together, and I was just going to do publishing. So I just expected myself writing an article once a week and just kind of trying to share information. And here we are now 5 months later, and we're on social media, we're recording podcasts, we're networking like it's wildfire, we're doing all these crazy things, and I wasn't expecting to do any of it. So, you know, you can just do something with your time, and fruition will come from it.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I need to get on with some TikTok content this evening for the podcast. So let's begin to wrap things up, and I want to finish, Matt, with the final question we always finish with the podcast, and that's, what is your final message for our audience that you want them to take away?
I would just say that if you have some sort of idea, whatever it is, you know, if it's something that, if you have an idea that's relevant to something you like, or just something that you think could be a business, just try it out. You know, ask people some questions while you're a student. It's the perfect time because you have free reign to go ask anybody anything with pretty much no barriers. You can even lie and say it's for a school project. No one's going to care or check, right? So yeah, I mean, especially if you're a student, or even just really like in that kind of Gen Z age right now, like, try it out. People will support you. I like Gary Vee's kind of mindset. He's pretty extreme and hardcore, but you know, like that's what kind of works, just hammered into that to some people. But yeah, like, just get up and do something, because you never know what's going to come from it. And at this stage, a failure is not a failure. On paper, I've failed every single business I've tried to start they haven't worked. They haven't made any significant money or anything, right? But they've introduced me to so many people and opened so many opportunities that I would have never gotten had I just gone to hang out with my friends and play basketball.
I mean, I could be completely open. For me, one of my biggest failures is the fact that when I first started trading, I decided to trade not on paper money, and I lost thousands of dollars. And I mean thousands of dollars. But you know what? That didn't deter me from wanting to learn how to trade, and I adjusted my concept of what I was doing, and I started to just keep practicing and keep practicing. And now when I talk to someone, whether it's someone that's 20 years old, someone that's 40 or 50 years old in any kind of financial industry, they're blown away by the knowledge that I have about the market and what I can explain to them and the concepts I can bring to the table. And you know, that's going to later translate to probably some kind of partnership or some kind of venture that I can use and gain, and really start to build out my desire and passion for finances. And it's all because I, you know, even though it was considered a failure in terms of on paper what happened, for me it wasn't a failure because I gained a lot of knowledge from what I did, and I continue to gain that knowledge, and that passion continues to grow every single day.
Uh-huh. And that's because as a student, there's zero expectation, right? If you reach out to me, I'm expecting zero from you, as in, I don't expect you to be as expert on here, this, that, or whatever. So any knowledge you bring is just icing on the cake.
And that's how we finish it, with a nice bit of cake. So, perfect. Thanks so much for your time, Matt. We really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, guys.
An awesome episode. I really enjoyed recording this one. And yeah, Matt's going to be a start of a journey. You know, he's very young, he's got so much to achieve, and I can't wait to hear it and see it further down the line. Join us next week for another entrepreneurial lifestyle chin wag that we have midweek, and then we have another interview due for next weekend for another entrepreneurial lifestyle as well. So join us for that. We really appreciate everyone's support. And also go and check out our YouTube. If you're listening to us right now, then head over on the YouTube. You can watch this video. Let's finish as we always do.
Cheers.
For
now.